When Sarah lost her mother to cancer 3 months ago, she couldn't imagine the depth of grief that would follow. Each night, alone in her bedroom, she would clutch her mother's old cardigan and weep until exhaustion finally granted her sleep. What Sarah didn't know was that every tear she shed created ripples of luminous energy that penetrated the boundary between worlds. In the realm beyond physical existence, souls perceive human emotions differently. Your grief, your tears, your heartache, they manifest as powerful surges of light. This is one of the profound spiritual truths that few understand about the connection between the living and those who have crossed over. The ancient wisdom teaches us that when we cry for our departed loved ones, we create an energetic beacon that they can see and feel. Your tears are not just water and salt. They carry the essence of your love, your memories, and your unresolved emotions. They shine like beacons in the spiritual dimension, drawing the attention of those for whom they are shed. A woman in Colorado once shared her experience during a profound meditation. "I felt my father's presence so strongly. It was as if he was trying to tell me that my grief was like a spotlight that prevented him from moving forward in his journey. The message wasn't to stop loving him, but to transform my pain into acceptance." This perspective aligns with what many spiritual seekers have discovered through deep contemplation. When we cry from a place of raw pain and inability to accept loss, our emotional energy creates a binding force. The souls of our departed can see this force as a turbulent storm of energy, beautiful in its intensity, but concerning in its effect. Edgar once described this phenomenon in a reading. The emotions of those in the physical plane appear as colors and vibrations to those in the spiritual realm. Grief is not hidden from them. Rather, it shines more brightly than almost any other emotion. Consider what happens in the invisible world when you sit alone, holding a photograph, tears streaming down your face as you whisper to someone who has passed. In that moment, a bridge forms. The soul of your beloved does not see your physical tears. They perceive the emotional energy behind them. This energy appears as waves of color and light, shifting and changing with the nature of your feelings. Pure love manifests as a gentle golden radiance. Regret and guilt create darker, more turbulent patterns. Anger forms sharp, red spikes of energy. Your loved ones see all of this, understanding the complexity of your emotions in ways that transcend words. A hospice nurse once told me about a remarkable pattern she had witnessed over decades of working with the dying. Those who pass peacefully often describe seeing the emotional ties that connect them to their loved ones. They speak of wanting to comfort those who will grieve, while also feeling a pull towards something greater beyond. The spiritual understanding of grief suggests that souls in transition exist in a state of heightened awareness. They perceive the emotional bonds that connect them to the physical world with perfect clarity. Your tears, your words spoken in solitude, your silent prayers, none of these go unnoticed. When Sarah cried for her mother night after night, she unwittingly created a powerful connection. In the spiritual realm, her mother could see Sarah's grief as a brilliant, pulsating light, beautiful in its love, but concerning in its intensity. The pain in Sarah's heart manifested as a swirling vortex of energy, tethering her mother's soul to the earthly plane. This is the profound paradox of grief. The very love that binds us to those who have passed can sometimes make their transition more difficult. Yet this connection serves a purpose in the greater spiritual journey of both the departed and those who remain. The ancient teachings tell us that the dead do not suffer as we imagine. They exist in a state of expanded awareness, able to perceive the truth behind our emotions. They see not just our tears, but the love that causes them to fall. They understand the journey of grief in ways that we, limited by our physical perspective, cannot fully comprehend. What Sarah would eventually learn, as many do on the path of healing, is that transforming grief into gratitude creates a different kind of light, one that both honors the connection and allows the soul to continue its journey without the weight of our unresolved pain. As you reflect on your own experiences of loss, consider the possibility that your tears are seen, your pain is understood, and your love continues to create bridges between worlds, bridges that can either bind or liberate, depending on the nature of the emotions that form them. What many don't realize is that when a soul transitions from this physical world, they don't simply vanish into an unreachable void. The connection between souls transcends the physical barriers we perceive. Your departed loved ones remain aware of your life, your struggles, and your moments of joy, especially during times when your emotions reach out for them. Claire, a woman who experienced a profound near-death experience after a car accident, described what she witnessed during the 3 minutes her heart stopped beating. I could see my family in the waiting room, not just their physical bodies, but the colorful auras of their emotions. My husband's worry appeared as a deep blue cloud around him. My daughter's fear was like flashes of lightning. I understood their feelings with perfect clarity without needing to hear their words. This heightened perception reflects what many spiritual traditions have taught for centuries. The souls of the departed exist in a state of expanded awareness, able to perceive not just our physical actions, but the emotional energy behind them. When you sit by their grave and speak to them, when you look at old photographs and reminisce, when you mark anniversaries or birthdays, they are present, observing with compassion and understanding. A hospice chaplain once shared the story of an elderly man who, in his final moments, began speaking to his long-deceased wife as if she were standing at the foot of his bed. "She's come to help me cross over," he said with perfect lucidity. "She says she's been watching over our grandchildren. She knows about the new baby, even though she passed before the child was born." This connection is not limited by time or space as we understand them. The realm of spirit operates according to different laws of resonance and intention, rather than physical proximity. Your loved ones can be present with you in an instant, drawn by the beacon of your emotional need, or the simple act of remembering them with love. A mother who lost her teenage son describes sensing his presence most strongly when she visited his bedroom, which she had kept unchanged since his passing. "Sometimes I'll find a small object moved, or catch a familiar scent in the air. During my deepest moments of grief, I felt a gentle pressure on my shoulder, the same way he used to rest his hand there when he was alive." For these experiences, reported across cultures and throughout human history, suggest that the boundary between our world and theirs is more permeable than we might believe. The veil thins when emotions intensify, creating windows of connection. From the perspective of the departed, your grief appears as a powerful energy signature. They can see the tears you shed in private, the moments when you pause during your day, overcome by a wave of remembrance. They witness your struggles to move forward while honoring their memory. A grief counselor who works with bereaved parents often tells them, "Your child sees your pain, but they also see your strength." They witness your efforts to create meaning from loss, to keep their memory alive while continuing your own journey. This ongoing awareness doesn't mean that departed souls remain perpetually fixated on the living. Their experience of existence has expanded, encompassing realities and purposes beyond our comprehension. Yet the bonds of love maintain a connection that transcends death, allowing them to remain conscious of significant moments in the lives of those they cherished. When you celebrate achievements they didn't live to see, when you face challenges and silently wish for their guidance, when you reach milestones that they would have celebrated with you, they are aware. They perceive these moments not as distant observers, but as conscious participants in your emotional experience. A widow describes sensing her husband's presence most strongly on their wedding anniversary. "I felt him there, celebrating with me, even as I sat alone at our favorite restaurant. I ordered his favorite dessert and left it untouched across the table. The waiter asked if someone was joining me, and in the truest sense, someone was." This ongoing connection reveals one of the most profound spiritual truths. Consciousness continues beyond physical death, and love creates bonds that transcend the boundary between worlds. Your departed loved ones haven't abandoned you to face life alone. They remain aware, supportive witnesses to your journey. The departed see more clearly than we can imagine. Free from physical limitations, they perceive the complete tapestry of emotions, intentions, and unspoken thoughts. They understand the complex layers of grief, the anger intertwined with love, the guilt mixed with relief, the momentary joy that brings sudden shame. As you move through your day, carrying the invisible weight of loss, remember that you are not walking unobserved or uncared for. The souls of those who have crossed over remain connected through bonds of love and shared experience. They witness your tears with compassion, understanding the journey of grief in ways that transcend our limited human perspective. When grief overwhelms us and tears flow uncontrollably, something remarkable happens in the spiritual realm. These moments of intense emotional release act as powerful calls that draw the souls of our departed loved ones closer to us. Your deepest sorrow creates ripples across the veil, summoning those for whom your heart aches. A grief therapist who works with bereaved families shared this insight. Many of my clients report sensing a loved one's presence most strongly during moments of overwhelming grief. It's as if their tears open a temporary doorway between worlds, allowing a brief but profound connection. This phenomenon has been documented across cultures and throughout history. The ancient Egyptians believed that tears for the deceased helped guide their journey in the afterlife. Indigenous traditions worldwide speak of crying ceremonies that both honor the departed and invite their spiritual presence to comfort the living. Consider what happens energetically when you reach the breaking point of sorrow, when the weight of absence becomes too heavy to bear alone. In that raw, vulnerable state, your emotional energy surges outward like a beacon. The souls of those you mourn perceive this energy not as something distressing, but as a call for connection. A woman who lost her sister described such a moment. 6 months after her passing, I found her favorite scarf while cleaning. I collapsed on the floor, clutching it and sobbing uncontrollably. In that moment, I felt a sudden warmth envelop me, like being wrapped in an embrace. The air seemed to change, becoming charged with her familiar presence. My tears didn't stop, but they transformed from tears of anguish to tears of connection. This response from beyond doesn't happen because your departed loved ones wish to see you suffer. Rather, they respond to your need for comfort during your most vulnerable moments. They approach with compassion, seeking to ease the pain that called out to them. A hospice nurse of 30 years observed, "Many people report feeling a reassuring presence during their most intense grief. They describe sensations like a gentle touch on their shoulder, a familiar scent in the room, or a sudden warm breeze on a still day. These experiences often occur when they've reached emotional rock bottom. What's happening in these moments is a form of spiritual consolation. The souls of the departed perceive your tears as both an invitation and a need. They draw near, doing what they can within the limitations that separate our realms to offer comfort and reassurance." A father who lost his young daughter to illness shared his experience. "One night, about a year after she passed, I was looking through her drawings and completely broke down. As I sat there weeping, her favorite wind chime suddenly began to play, though there was no breeze. It continued for several minutes, and I knew with absolute certainty that she was telling me she was okay." These moments of connection through intense grief serve a purpose for both the living and the departed. For us, they provide reassurance that death has not severed the bonds of love. For them, these moments allow an opportunity to offer comfort and to communicate their continued presence in our lives. However, while our tears may summon them, spiritual wisdom teaches that the departed cannot fully intervene in our grief process. They can offer subtle signs of their presence, but the journey through sorrow remains our own to navigate. They observe our suffering with compassion, but understand that healing must unfold in its own time. A medium who has worked with thousands of bereaved individuals explained, "The departed often express concern when grief becomes prolonged and debilitating. They want to help, but they cannot take away your pain. They can only stand witness to it, offering their presence during the darkest moments. This understanding gives new meaning to our tears. They are not simply expressions of loss. They are communications that transcend the boundary between worlds. When we weep for those who have passed, we are, in a very real sense, speaking directly to them through the language of emotion." A woman who lost her mother described sensing her presence most strongly during a moment of deep sorrow. "I was going through her clothes, deciding what to keep and what to donate. I found a handwritten note in her sweater pocket and just fell apart. In that moment, the room filled with her favorite perfume, just for a few seconds, but unmistakable. I knew she was there, witnessing my pain, trying to comfort me." These experiences suggest that our most intense grief creates opportunities for connection. While the departed may maintain a general awareness of our lives, it is during these peaks of emotion that the veil between worlds thins most dramatically. allowing for moments of more direct contact. A grief counselor who specializes in helping parents who have lost children notes, many parents describe sensing their child's presence during milestone moments, birthdays, holidays, anniversaries of the passing. But the most profound connections often come unexpectedly, during private moments of overwhelming grief, when defenses are down and the heart is completely open. This understanding offers a different perspective on our tears. Rather than seeing them solely as expressions of pain, we might recognize them as creating sacred moments of connection. When we allow ourselves to fully feel and express our grief, we may be opening ourselves to receiving subtle messages of comfort from beyond. As you move through your own journey of loss, remember that your tears are seen and understood by those for whom they fall. Your sorrow calls to them, drawing them near in moments when you need their presence most. Though they cannot wipe away your tears directly, they respond to them with love and compassion, offering what comfort they can across the divide that separates your world from theirs. Perhaps the most challenging spiritual truth about grief is understanding how our prolonged suffering affects those who have passed. When we remain trapped in cycles of debilitating sorrow, unable to move forward, we create energetic bonds that can tether the souls of our loved ones to earthly concerns, potentially hindering their spiritual progression. A spiritual teacher who has guided many through grief shared this insight. In the most profound sense, there comes a time when our grief must transform, not because we stop loving, but because true love eventually recognizes that holding on too tightly serves neither the living nor the departed. This understanding appears across diverse spiritual traditions. The Tibetan Book of the Dead speaks of how attachment from the living can create confusion for souls in transition. Indigenous wisdom teaches that excessive mourning can make it difficult for spirits to complete their journey. Even in modern hospice care, there are countless stories of dying individuals who seem unable to let go until their family gives them permission to depart. Consider what happens energetically when grief becomes chronic, when years pass, but the pain remains as fresh and debilitating as the day of loss. From a spiritual perspective, this creates what mystics have described as cords of attachment, energetic connections that maintain a powerful pull between the living and the departed. A medium who has facilitated thousands of connections described it this way: "When I connect with souls who have passed, they sometimes express concern about loved ones who cannot move forward. They show me images of themselves being tethered to earth by glowing cords of grief. While they feel compassion for the pain, they also gently wish for these bonds to loosen so they can fully embrace their spiritual journey." This doesn't mean we should not grieve. Grief is a natural, necessary process of honoring love and loss. Rather, it suggests that grief itself has a purpose and evolution. It begins as raw pain, but must eventually transform into something that honors both the departed and the continuing life of those who remain. A woman who lost her husband described her journey. "For 2 years after his death, I visited his grave daily, often spending hours talking to him and weeping. One day, I clearly heard his voice in my mind saying, 'I'm not here, love. I'm everywhere now.' That moment changed everything. I still miss him terribly, but my grief has transformed into something lighter that doesn't keep either of us trapped." Edgar taught that excessive grief can actually cause distress to those who have passed over. In one of his most compassionate readings, he explained that when we remain inconsolable, the departed soul experiences this as a form of calling that they cannot fully answer, creating a state of divided attention as they try to both progress on their spiritual path and respond to the needs of those still bound by profound grief. A father shared his experience following the loss of his son. 6 months after the accident, I was still unable to function. I'd lost my job, rarely left the house, and spent most days in his room. One night, I dreamed of him standing in a beautiful garden. He looked healthy and at peace, but said, "Dad, you have to let me go now. Your pain is like a rope pulling me back." I woke up with a profound understanding that my grief was affecting him, not just me. This perspective offers a new way to understand healing. When we begin to transform raw grief into loving remembrance, when we find ways to honor our loved ones through living well rather than through endless suffering, we participate in a spiritual act of liberation for ourselves and for them. A grief counselor who incorporates spiritual perspectives explained, "The healthiest resolution isn't forgetting or moving on, as our culture often suggests. It's transforming the relationship from one of physical presence to spiritual connection. When grief evolves into gratitude for having known them, both the living and the departed experience a form of freedom. This evolution doesn't happen overnight, nor does it follow a predictable timeline. For some, the transformation begins within months. For others, years may pass before grief begins to shift its shape. What matters is the gradual opening to the possibility that our loved ones continue to exist in a different form, and that our relationship with them can evolve rather than end." A woman who lost her daughter described this transition. "For 3 years, I was consumed by grief. Then gradually, I began to feel her presence in different ways, not as someone absent, but as a loving energy still participating in my life. I started to live again, not despite her death, but as a way to honor what she would want for me. Somehow, I knew this change was freeing for both of us. From the perspective of those who have crossed over, this transformation appears as a beautiful metamorphosis of energy. When raw grief begins to evolve into loving memory, when tears of anguish transform into tears of gratitude, the spiritual bond shifts from one of painful attachment to one of loving connection that supports rather than restricts." A hospice chaplain shared, "Many who are approaching death express concern about how their passing will affect loved ones. When I ask what they would want for their family after they're gone, the answer is always some variation of, 'I want them to be happy, to live fully.' No one wants to be remembered through endless suffering." This understanding offers profound guidance for our grief journey. We honor our departed loved ones not by remaining broken, but by allowing our love for them to become an integrated part of our continuing life. We carry them forward not through unhealed wounds, but through the ways their love has shaped us. As we learn to transform our grief, allowing the sharp pain to gradually evolve into tender remembrance, we create a different kind of light in the spiritual realm. Rather than the turbulent storm of raw grief, we generate a steady, warm glow of love that both honors our connection and allows greater freedom for the soul's journey. A woman who found healing after losing her mother described it beautifully. "I still cry sometimes, but the tears are different now. They're not the desperate tears of someone trying to hold on to what's gone, but the grateful tears of someone blessed to have loved so deeply. Somehow, I know my mother sees this change, and that it brings her peace. In this transformation lies the deepest truth about what the dead see when we cry for them, and what they hope to eventually see. Not our endless suffering, but our gradual healing. Not our determination to remain broken in their absence, but our courage to live fully, because they once showed us how to love. This is perhaps their greatest wish for us, that the love we shared becomes not a source of permanent anguish, but a foundation for continued growth, meaning, and joy. In this way, we honor them most truly, allowing both their souls and our hearts the freedom to continue their respective journeys, connected always by love, but not bound by unresolved pain. If this perspective on grief and spiritual connection resonated with you, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing these profound insights that bring comfort during life's most challenging moments. Have you ever felt the presence of a loved one who has passed, or experienced a moment when your tears seemed to create a bridge between worlds? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might bring comfort to someone else walking this path of grief and healing. Click the notification bell to be alerted when we release our next exploration of the spiritual dimensions of human experience. Until then, may you find peace in knowing that love transcends all boundaries, even death itself.